What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode number 273 of the A2D From Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. Today's episode, number 273, is entitled Brian's Story. It's a Wacky Wednesday, so we're going through the chapters of From Ashes to Destiny curriculum. We're in phase 4, which deals with learning to walk in freedom. And this is the first story from chapter 15 in phase 4. And I'll call it the story of Brian. This opening story in the chapter talks about who we're praying for every day. And it's the story of Brian I wrote because it ties into this as many addicts in rehab begin to seek a spiritual side of their life while they're in rehab. They begin to read the Bible and pray, hoping to find the strength to stay clean. Their long-term hope is to be able to be reunited with family and get a good job. That would be an accurate description of most of the men I met during my years of holding the spirituality night at Fresh Start Rehab in Kensington. Brian was a young man I met at Fresh Start. I grew up Catholic, so I never got into reading the Bible or anything like that, Brian said the first night I met him. But what I just saw on that video really opened my eyes, he continued. How can I learn that stuff? I want to be more like Jesus. I'd love to meet with you one-on-one to pray and do some discipleship, I said. What's that? Asked Brian. It means I'd help you learn what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, I replied. I thought he had only 12 disciples, he countered. At least that's what the nuns taught us in school. We can all be disciples of Jesus, I said. It simply means to be a student of his word and a follower of him, I continued. You know, a Christian who is really trying to grow in their faith and their understanding of God, taking on the character of Christ, I explained. That's what I want, said Brian. I want to be like Jesus and stop doing drugs and messing up all the time. The staff at Fresh Start approved our one-on-one meetings, and Brian began a study of the book of Philippians. Our focus was on the character of Christ and how Brian could make Jesus' character his own. We met twice a week for the next month before Brian finished in the program and moved back home. I didn't see Brian again for over 2 years as our family spent almost half a year in China and moved to another part of Philly upon our return. One day while I was in Dunkin' Donuts in Holmesburg, the section of Philadelphia, Brian walked up to me and gave me a big smile and a bigger hug. Thank you so much, Pastor Dave, for all you taught me, he gushed. It's really true. I have the Holy Spirit inside of me, and I'm living like Jesus. Okay. Good story of a guy who really had a transformation inside. So let's look at the story a little bit deeper and dig into some questions. First point is the spiritual side of your life in rehab. I had mentioned that many people in rehab get in touch with their spiritual side. So they find themselves while they're in rehab praying for the strength to stay clean, sort of as a short-term goal. So I want to ask you, what is your short-term prayer or hope in rehab? It was also mentioned in the story that the long-term hope for many guys in rehab is to be reunited with their family and find a good job. I'd like to ask you, if this comes early in rehab, do you leave rehab early? You with me? If you're only a couple of months into a 6 or 9 or 12-month rehab, and your family's ready to be reunited again, and a new job opens up with a new career, do you leave rehab early because your long-term hope showed up early? Do you trust that both will still be there if you complete the program? That if you stay the course and put in the full term of the program, that your family and a job will still be there? What do you risk if you leave the program early for a good job or family now? Okay, next discussion point. Brian's eyes were opened to spirituality he had never experienced. He asked, "How can I learn that stuff?" So I'd like to ask you, what things have your eyes been open to early in your recovery? How can you learn more in those areas? How can you learn that stuff and dig deeper? Next discussion point. Brian wanted to be a student, a disciple of Jesus, and learn his character. I'd like to ask you, what have you become a student of where you're at in rehab or in a homeless shelter or halfway house, wherever you are? What have you become a student of, a follower of in your recovery? What are you doing to grow in your faith and understanding? How's it strengthening you? Will it be a strong foundation that keeps you from messing up again? Brian, one of his motivations was that he didn't want to keep messing up over and over again. I saw Brian 2 years later, and he was doing great. He was living the character of Christ. Something truly had changed inside. I'd like to ask you, what has changed inside of you? How can you make it the foundation for the rest of your life so that when people see you, when you bump into them in a Dunkin' Donuts or wherever, the change is not only there, but that change has become the foundation for your life. And the rest of this chapter, if you'd be going through the curriculum, challenges you to look at a character trait list that could be a personal inventory for you. So I'd like to challenge you now, what personal inventory list could you write to make sure you were staying on track, that you were staying in this new foundation life? So it's easy to make a personal inventory on our behavior, but how about on your character traits? That sort of harkens back to the personal inventory we did in step 10 of the 12 steps, but this is one that really digs into a personal inventory of your character traits, and that's what Brian did, and that's what we talked about that day at Dunkin' Donuts. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you were saying, that's me, or I'd like that to be me, I want to encourage you to get in touch with someone. Join a group, contact your coach, your sponsor, your family, your friends, whoever, and get connected. You can message me on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfroma2d@gmail.com, or go to my website, www.froma2d.org, and click on the contact page. If you're listening on Spotify, you can leave your comments by clicking on the link they provide in that platform. Keep listening to future podcast episodes, and as always, stay safe and stay resilient.